Is that right? Sorry, I've had a lot of concussions.
Long story. I started when I was a kid. My mom didn't want me to play football. I was playing basketball, but there's off season, so I wasn't doing anything. Kind of went from that. I fell in love with the sport once I started winning, started traveling, just saw the world from a different perspective. Yeah, and then it just kind of grew from there. I got a really cool opportunity to be on this team called Rock Racing, and that kind of shaped my vision of cycling completely differently than the path most people get to take. And then after that, I went to Europe for 2 years, didn't love it, came back home, rode pro on a domestic level. I just kind of started picking up on some of the things that I thought could be cool, some ways I thought could change the sport. Yeah, and then eventually I spent a year on my own, 2018. Really had a lot of fun traveling to my favorite races, seeing a bunch of my favorite people, getting to experience cultures from all over, the country. And I wanted to share that and kind of give that back to kids that come from a place that I come from and I know could kind of embrace the sport in a different way if they had access to it. That's really the driving force behind who we are and what we're doing.
I've been racing since I was 6 years old. I used to race on a world tour team straight out of juniors, and I was getting pretty exhausted on just the travel and the commitment away from home. It wasn't really aligning with my goals, and I wasn't able to pursue trying to make the Olympic team. And I talked to Justin. Yeah, he was game to bring me on board and start a women's team, and here we are.
Man, I would say my cycling career has been quite a long one. I actually started riding bikes around the same time I started walking, so from a very, very young age. I started racing when I was 4, did my first ever cross-country mountain bike race. Cycling was something that I started focusing mostly on in high school when I started doing well in the NorCal High School Mountain Bike Series, and then continued on into college at UCLA with the collegiate team there, and then after that started racing primarily mountain biking professionally for a couple years, and then in 2017 switched to road racing primarily, and then have pretty much just been on the road racing ever since. But yeah, it's been a long road for sure since I did start so young.
I got to this point in my cycling career, I would say mostly by chance. I didn't grow up as a cyclist at all. I didn't actually grow up as an athlete in any way, shape, or form, but going into high school, I knew I kind of wanted to try competition in some form or another, so I took up running. After high school, there was a bit of a void where I knew I wanted to continue competing and satisfying that athletic zeal I'd developed in high school, but I didn't want to run just because it's a pretty brutal sport if you're not just physically gifted for it. But then I found cycling actually was a wonderful sport with a wonderful community when I moved to LA, not only because the community itself was just a very welcoming bunch of people, but also is a sport that welcomes and celebrates bodies of all kinds. And I always struggled with body image and on cycling, a variety of people who were able to be successful in the same sport. So that really drew me into the sport, and then got a bike, joined the club team at UCLA, and just became obsessed. And from there, I actually befriended Justin and Corey back in 2014 when I first started riding, and then kind of worked my way through the amateur scene, through the national racing scene, got a pro contract in 2019, and finally reconnected with Justin and Corey at the beginning of 2020 and asked, or at the end of 2020, and asked if I could be on the team just because I believe in the mission of the program. I believe in what they're doing with the sport and trying to revitalize the North American scene, and now we're here.
The piece of gear that is non-negotiable that I would not ride without would probably be a helmet, because safety first. But I also feel like that's kind of the most obvious answer, but I would still have to say the helmet.
Ooh, so I have the Rafa wallet. I put my phone in it, I put all my things in it. Keeps my things from getting really sweaty because I sweat a lot. Have to have it. And yeah, that's literally the thing I bring with me every time. Even if I'm just going like shopping at the store one day, like I'll just use that instead of my purse. Yeah, it's super convenient.
I mean, if we're talking riding, it really is my saddlebag. I guess it's not a single piece of gear, but if people who know me know that I pack a really crammed saddlebag, which includes but is sometimes not limited to 2 tubes, 3 CO2s, you know, a tubeless repair kit, a little wrench that I can use to, I don't even know, it's like a little crescent wrench that's about this big, but one time I needed a crescent wrench, and so now I carry a little crescent wrench. I have a pair of tweezers, I have plugs, I have spare batteries for my power meter and shifters, I have spare valve stem. I mean, I literally carry anything that could get me and a friend back home pretty much after every accident, save for a frame snapping in half. So that is essential to me. I never go on a single ride without it. I have to go on with my saddlebag, and it adds like 5 pounds to my bike.
Probably my phone, probably my Jaybird headphones. Those are probably the 2 things that, like, even if especially when I'm riding with Corey, I gotta take headphones because everyone's like, we'll get into an argument and be riding next to each other, literally bouncing off each other and not talking. And I was just like, pop my headphone in, listen to music, man. Music is everything. I would say my phone, most important. If I have to stop, if I have to check anything, I've been working a ton, so like emails are always there. Kit's always calling me. And then if I need to listen to some music to like pick up the tempo or calm me down, get me through the day, my phone would be number 1.
This is a severely male-dominated sport, and I would really like to encourage a lot more females to get into it and ride their bikes and have fun and race and see how awesome cycling is.
I think the ultimate impact that I would like to have is that racing is just not the end-all be-all of what a cycling experience can be. It definitely has been the crux of my experience so far, but I also would love to stress to people that getting on a bike is largely experiential for whatever you make it. Racing is my experience, but that's not necessarily everyone else's, and that is a completely legitimate way to experience a bike. I think for most people, I want to just stress that cycling should be liberation, it should be education, and it should be fun. And I think it's easy to get caught up in the stress of trying to compete or reach goals, but at the end of the day, I just think riding a bike should always just be pure enjoyment. That's how I found it, and that's how I want my relationship with the bicycle to continue throughout the rest of my life.
This team does so much, you know, both on and off the bike, watching, you know, all the things that they do to give back to the community. It's truly inspiring and is a huge influence as to why I was so excited to join the program this year. For myself, I'm really looking forward to doing community work, you know, through Legion this year, doing some junior camps with Sam, one of my teammates. I'm also hoping to do some outreach with Outride, who I'm also an ambassador for, and then also through my Dreamcatcher Foundation. The Dreamcatcher Foundation is something that I started with my fiance, who's a professional football player for the Bills. His name's Eli Anku. And we started it about 3 to 4 years ago with the intent behind it being to empower Native youth through sports, particularly through football and cycling. Him being a football player, me being a cyclist, and both of us being Native American professional athletes, we just both felt just such a strong inclination to give back to Native youth in any way possible. And we just felt the best way to do that was through starting this foundation, raising funds through our foundation to provide bikes and helmets for Native youth across, you know, in reservations across the country. So that's kind of like one side of our foundation, very sports focused. And then the other side of our foundation, I would say, is just all about raising awareness of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls crisis, or in other words, the MMIWG crisis happening in North America, which is something that not a lot of people are aware of. And it's very sad, to be honest, because this is happening within our own country, as well as in Canada. Native women are murdered at a rate 10 times higher than the national average, which is astounding, and it's just sad that more people are unaware, or more people don't know about this. So yeah, that's the other side of our foundation, is just raising as much awareness of that as we can, because it is something that most people have no idea is happening. And then the other side is, you know, empowering Native youth through sports.
I mean, it's just the beginning right now with the Legion. With what we have one team. We're developing another and another and another, and then we want to throw races on top of that. So to really kind of create this umbrella that raises the standard across the sport, so that some kid that sacrifices 30 hours of his week to his craft can have something to benefit from, or have something to show for it on the other side of it. Right now, it's not realistic for me to tell a kid from Compton to focus on bike racing. There's no real top end to it, you know what I mean? So our objective is to build that side of the sport so that when we do start kind of seeing more and more diverse people, backgrounds, cultures get into the sport, they have somewhere to go, they have something to be proud of, they have something to show for their efforts. So that's really where we're going. Right now we're starting small, giving people a voice, raising standards throughout the industry, doing really good in racing. I was going to say a bad word. Doing really good in the racing side of it and really being that inspiration, that amplifier, and that voice for change. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Keep your eyes on Competitive Cyclists for more update from the Legion team.